Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, I'm Sri Rahayu. Here I want to present my research in chapter 1 and chapter 2 with the title of the effect of talking chip technique on student speaking ability. First, in my research, there is a background of the problem. Basically, English is one of the most international languages widely used in communicating between nations. Actually, in Indonesia, English as a foreign language that studied as a compulsory subject from junior high school to college. Actually, in Indonesia, there are many students who are lazy to learn to speak English in a class because they find it very difficult, especially when answer question on an exam. From the result of preliminary research at Senior High School of Pembangunan UNP, it was found that students experience difficult. Most of students are not active in speaking English in class. In other words, researchers can say that students are discouraged in doing assigned tasks. They are very lazy to go class because they are learn using textbook and assignment most of the time, and then the most students are shy and don't want to talk based on the background above. And then the researcher was interested to use talking chip to help students in learning speaking. That's why the researcher chose to research the effect of talking chip technique on student speaking ability. Next is identification of the problem. As we know, for Indonesian students, they have a lot of difficulty speaking in English. This problem is caused by several factors, for which there are much an appropriate solution to improve speaking skill. The first problem is related by students themselves, such as first, they lack mastery of vocabulary. Second, many people lack confidence when speaking English. The next is formulation of the problem. In this study is about how is the effect of application talking chip technique on the students speaking ability in senior high school. And in hypothesis of the research, the researcher show there are significant effect how applying talking chip technique on student speaking ability. And in purpose of the research is about to find out the effect of the application talking chip technique on the student speaking ability in senior high school. And the last is definition of the key term. Consists of first, definition of speaking. Speaking is language skill to communication with other people. And second is definition of talking chip. Talking chip is a technique which consists of a group participants that use of several chips in the procedure. Okay, the first is review of related theories, which consists of the concept of speaking and the concept of talking chip technique. Okay, I will explain the concept of the speaking. Okay, actually, definition of speaking. Speaking is oral language to communication with other people. Basically, speaking is very important to learn language. This is because we as social beings need to pay attention to each other to express their ideas and thoughts for assistance and persuade others. Jadi maksudnya gini, berdasarkan teori-teori di atas telah dikemukakan, bisa kita simpulkan bahwa jika seseorang menggunakan bahasa untuk mengungkapkan sesuatu kepada orang lain dengan tujuan agar orang lain dapat memahami apa yang kita katakan, Maka hal itu bisa disebut dengan speaking. Dan menurut saya juga dengan adanya speaking merupakan sebuah wadah untuk mengungkapkan suatu gagasan secara lisan maupun berkomunikasi dengan baik dengan orang lain. The next is principle of speaking. According to Carr and Carr, 1977, speaking is a fundamental instrumental act, so that students must learn how to communicate with speaking English. They must learn speaking skill. Therefore, the talk must look at what the topic from the conversation to provide other information sharing. Then, the next is teaching speaking. Teaching speaking is a very crucial part of teaching English. Communicating in English clearly and effectively can contribute to students' school and success in the future. Therefore, a teacher must be effective in teaching speaking by carrying out various speaking activities to students, and then the teacher must also motivate students to learn more about speaking. Some of the reasons why the ability to speak is so important in our lives is that even though we speak, we can convey our ideas and thoughts. The next is the concept of talking chip technique. First is definition of talking chip technique. According to Dev 2010, states that the talking chip technique is a technique that makes a value of everyone's contribution become a real and provides an opportunity to speak. This means that students must have an equal opportunity to speak in the classroom. If one student has two opportunities to speak, and the other student also have the same opportunities to speak twice in class. And the next is procedures of talking chip technique. Actually, in the talking chip technique, there are several procedures that must be done by the teacher if the teacher wants to use this technique. First, the teacher should make a group of students and then give each student 3 or 5 tokens or chip, which will serve as permission to share, contribute, and argue in the conversation. When they have received the token or the chip, students must count equally in the group discussion, and starting that when they give comments, and they must submit inside and put it in the front of other groups members. After that, when all students have contributed to the discussion and all the tokens have been dropped, ask students to take and use the chip so that the procedure is repeated for the next and round of discussion or end the discussion when the activity is complicated. Advantages and disadvantages of this of talking chip technique. Advantages, namely, first, talking chip technique can provide opportunities for students to talk and give challenge for students. And then number 2 is this technique requires a challenge in discussion group, and then thus every individual has an opportunity to contribute and no individual dominance in groups. And there is a disadvantages, namely, first, actually this technique can hinder in a natural conversation since this technique procedures, but this condition will provide opportunities for all students to speak in class. And number 2 is this situation makes the discussion feel rigged and contrived, but in this case, very stiff and artificial will not interfere with student learning from then on the discussion went. Review of related finding. There are three related findings which relate to this research. The first finding is review for the thesis that written by Anna Rahmi, Siti Susanti, with the title Development of Talking Chip Basic Learning Model in a Vocational High School age in Medan. In this study aim to describe how the application of talking chip learning model to improve motivation and learning outcome of basic culinary art of students. In this research use types research development. And the second finding is review from a thesis written by Titi Nurjana, Widya Astuti, and Evi Kareviati with the title Improving High School Student Speaking Skill in the Language English Language Discussion Learning Process using the Talking Chip Technique in Sidangkerta High School. The method used in this research is classroom action research. The researcher focused on the process of improving speaking skill and in the learning process. And actually, the data collection was carried by observation, field notes, and tests. And another research was also conducted by Yayu Hayulina Manurung with the title The Effect of Application of Talking Chip Technique on Student Speaking Skill, First Year Study of the English Education Study Program of Muhammadiyah University on North Sumatra. In this research was conducted to see the effectiveness of the application of the talking chip technique on the speaking skill of students in the first academic year of the English Education Department of Muhammadiyah University in North Sumatra. In this research, the study used experimental research to determine whether there are different significant speaking skill of students who use talking chip technique called the experimental group. And then based on the three studies above, the researcher decided to use talking chip technique by conducting experimental research. And actually the technique of collecting data by using pre-test, the treatment, and post-test. This research aimed to know the effect of application talking chip technique on the student's speaking ability in senior high school. Theoretical framework. Based on the diagram above, it can explain it that in the first diagram, at this initial stage, the teacher must divide all students in the class into 4 until 5 groups. And the next diagram, we can see that explain that the teacher assigned to students the material in group, as well as giving each student a specific number of checks to use during discussion. For example, the teacher provides several articles to be discussed by students. After that, the teacher asks students to select only one article will be discussed in the groups. Then, every members on the group will get the same number of chips to use as a chance to talk on discussion. And then the teacher has in the next diagram, you can see that the teacher has to ask question or give text to groups and give students time to gather their analysis and record some their ideas. As an example, the teacher show articles on the different topic to the class. Then each group must select only one article to discuss. During discussion, the teacher will record the process. And then after that, the teacher informs students that the chip they are giving are minimal demand. The chip they should use during the discussion. Okay, the next is we can see that at this stage, the teacher asks students to start a discussion. They place the chip in center table when it's their turn to speak. For example, the teacher asks students to start a discussion. After that, the teacher asks directly about that article selected by group, and the group members one by one must provide their arguments by placing one chip for one argument on the center of the table. And the last diagram, we can see that all students must contribute to this assignment. Because why? Because the assignment will be taken individually, so that if there are students or individuals who are not active, it will affect of the value of the studies of the student. And also, if students are seriously about implementation this technique, the speaking ability will have a good impact from before. I think that's all on my presentation about the chapter 1 and 2 of my research. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.